Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is now in deep trouble. In front of a judge seeking criminal contempt charges for ignoring court orders, the Trump Justice Department, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, just said it was Kristi Noem's fault. That's right, the Trump administration is blaming Noem and sacrificing her. Here's the background.
Department of Justice has revealed that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made the final decision not to comply with a federal judge's order earlier this year to stop those deportation flights of alleged Venezuelan gang members.
As ABC News put it, Kristi Noem directed Venezuelans to be sent to El Salvador after federal judge ordered deportation planes turned around, says the DOJ. Quote, in the filing late Tuesday, the Department of Justice said that DOJ and DHS officials conveyed their legal advice to Noem after U.S. District Judge James Boasberg gave first an oral directive and then a written order that sought to block the deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. After receiving that legal advice, Secretary Noem directed that the AEA detainees who had been removed from the United States before the court's order could be transferred to the custody of El Salvador.
The disclosure comes as Judge James Boasberg seeks to revive criminal contempt proceedings against Trump administration officials who authorized the flights. The Justice Department argued the decision was lawful and consistent with its interpretation of the court's order, but Judge Boasberg said deportees likely did not receive due process.
So, what do we know about Kristi Noem's ability to assess legal advice and understand a court order? She is, after all, a former governor and leads the agency responsible for protecting the security of our nation. The Department of Homeland Security oversees several law enforcement agencies, so one would assume that Noem had a firm grasp on basic American legal principles, including following court orders. Well, 2 months after Noem defied the judge's order to halt the plane, Noem claimed, inaccurately, to Congress that the right of habeas corpus gives the president the right to remove people from this country.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people.
And on top of the government giving a reason for the detention, habeas corpus requires that the detainee be given an opportunity in court to challenge their detention.
If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea.
All of that seemed lost on Kristi Noem, and this was 2 months after she defied Judge Boasberg's order to halt the deportation flights. However, not having a basic understanding of American constitutional principles is usually not a great defense for anybody who defies a court order. And for Noem, who has countless lawyers and legal advisors around her at the Department of Homeland Security, pleading ignorance as her defense probably will not work. In Donald Trump's first presidential term, there were other administration staff who also ignored and defied court orders. And what happened to them?
They ended up being disbarred or having, in the case of, I believe, Jenna Ellis, having their law degrees practice suspended for several years. I mean, this doesn't end well.
In the meantime, as the News reports in a Substack column titled Contempt for Kristi Noem Now Official, Jonathan Larson writes, so what happens now? Boasberg could decide he needs more information or put the matter to bed, or he could put the matter to a cot in prison. Boasberg has already found probable cause that these previously unnamed mystery officials committed contempt of court by ignoring his order. He could now decide there was no contempt, it was all just a simple everyday misunderstanding that could happen to anyone during the course of their day, shipping 100 people to a foreign hellhole without due process, or Boasberg could hold Noem and her co-conspirators in contempt of court, which could involve criminal penalties. The Trump administration could then appeal such criminal penalties to the U.S. Supreme Court and try to undercut Judge Boasberg.
The problem is that they're dealing with a judge, Judge Boasberg, who's not some like 1960s Ninth Circuit hippie. He is one of the most respected conservative jurists in Washington, D.C. There are people on the Supreme Court who know him extraordinarily well. Long before Donald Trump ever thought about running for the Republican nomination in 2015, this judge that you're looking at right here was a rock-solid member of the jurist community in Washington, D.C., and beloved and respected by real conservatives. So to try to paint him as some left-wing radical certainly is not going to work in Washington among conservatives, and it's not going to work on the Supreme Court.
In other words, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is and even if Noem is not thrown behind bars for criminal contempt, the mere finding that she committed criminal contempt could trigger action in the U.S. Congress. Lawmakers could file articles of impeachment against Noem, pointing out that criminal contempt is indeed a high crime or misdemeanor. House Republicans who oppose that would then have to go on the record in an election year saying that defying a judge's order is okie dokie. Or some Republicans, already fearing polls showing public disgust with the Trump administration, may try to create some distance by doing what the DOJ did, and that is throw Kristi Noem under the proverbial bus. It all means that Kristi Noem is in big trouble. She defied a judge's order, and now, legally and politically, it's blowing up in Noem's face.
I'm very privileged and honored today to have my family with me. I'd like to introduce them to you.
Disruptions of congressional business is a violation of law, is a criminal offense under federal law. Audience members are advised to take their seats and maintain order.
That line from the protester dressed as a Catholic cardinal is said during exorcisms to get rid of a demon. The power of Christ compels you became particularly famous thanks to this scene in the 1973 movie The Exorcist. In the film, a priest tries to drive out a demon from a possessed young girl. Back in the congressional hearing, the highlighting of Noem's alleged demons kept coming.
The chairman may now ask Capitol Police to remove and arrest the persons creating the disturbance.
Get eyes off our streets! Stop terrorizing our community! Get eyes off our streets! Stop terrorizing our community! Get eyes off our streets! Stop terrorizing our community!
When Noem finally testified and took questions, Democrat Dan Goldman torched her on live television.
Immigrants then with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country, correct?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Your question was?
Immigrants with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country.
There are individuals in this country that have applications that...
And they are legally here because it's a lawful pathway, right?
It's a lawful pathway.
Okay, so if your department then deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law, correct?
Joe Biden left us with...
I'm not asking about Joe Biden. I'm asking you a specific question. If your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Is that correct?
It was greatly violated when they allowed
I'm asking you.
people to come
I'm
in
asking
and
you.
granted asylum applications.
Why are you filibustering? Why can't you answer the question? It's a simple question.
Your president,
if your department
and your secretary
deports
did not follow the
anyone
law
with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Isn't that correct?
the asylum program was broken under the last...
Mr. Chairman, I will reclaim my time. She's not answering the question. But the obvious answer is that, yes, if you follow a lawful pathway, asylum is a lawful pathway, if you have an open asylum case, you are here lawfully. But the problem that we are seeing around the country is that you are not following the law. Don't tell us to change the law. If you don't like the asylum system, you change the asylum law. Bring it to us. We'll work with you. I think it needs to be changed. But you can't just decide that you're not going to follow the law, and asylum is a law, and deport people who have ongoing applications.
And literally the same moment Noem was getting shredded in the House committee, a federal judge delivered a huge loss to Noem and to the Trump administration.
All right, we have some breaking news. A federal judge has just ordered that Kilmar Abrego Garcia be released from ICE custody immediately. This is a significant development in the case concerning the Salvadoran man mistakenly deported this year before being returned to the United States. He was really the center of the administration's controversial immigration policies.
New York Times headline, Judge orders Abrego Garcia's release from ICE detention. Quote, the ruling by the judge, Paula Zinnes, was a stinging defeat for the administration in a long and Byzantine saga that over the past year has transformed Mr. Abrego Garcia from an unknown Salvadoran migrant living in Maryland into one of the best-known symbols of President Trump's aggressive deportation agenda. The judge's ruling means that Garcia is now free from immigration custody and free from the shadow of possibly being deported yet again. On Capitol Hill, Kristi Noem received more beatdowns. Several lawmakers noted that a judge has found probable cause that Noem engaged in criminal contempt. It stems from Noem ignoring the judge's order on deportation flights.
Bottom line, you lie with impunity, you reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached. I've already called for your resignation. You may remember I hand-delivered my request to you back in May, and I urge you to reconsider resignation because I've taken the first step towards your impeachment, and I've called on the Judiciary Committee to open an investigation into your lawlessness.
After several rounds of getting shredded by committee Democrats, Noem left the hearing. Outside in the hallway, the reception was not much easier. More protesters swarmed Noem as she held a relative's baby and tried to accommodate a supporter's request for a selfie.
While taking babies away from the family. You cannot use a baby as a vehicle while you take away the rights of families. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? You are holding a baby as a child. You're holding a child as a separate children from their family. Separating numerous families. You should have shame.
That may be one of the few hugs Kristi Noem gets in Washington over the next few weeks. There are now multiple reports that President Trump is considering firing her.
We are back with new MS Now reporting that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem might soon be out of a job. 4 sources familiar with the situation told MS Now President Trump is considering removing Noem from her post as early as January. A White House official and a federal official said concerns over her management include the pace at which new immigration detention centers are being built.
That's right. Trump White House staff believe that Noem has not been demonic enough.
Specifically, they feel as though she has not, the White House aides, as well as Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, feel as though Kristi Noem has not been expanding detention capacity fast enough to support that deportation.
The Trump White House wants more deportations, but they see Noem as incapable or perhaps incompetent. It's kind of like, well, is the young girl levitating and screaming profanities because she's possessed by the devil or possessed by a demon? Either way, Kristi Noem's days appeared to be numbered, and no political exorcisms from the right or the left are going to cure her and allow Noem to keep her job going.
If you mistreat dogs, that's almost 100% sign that you're going to be a really terrible person. So it's one of the ways, we really sort of test people.
And one person by that standard who failed the test is Trump Cabinet Secretary Kristi Noem. The Secretary of Homeland Security and matron of prairie barbarism bragged in a book about shooting her puppy in cold blood.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem defending herself after revealing in her upcoming memoir that she once killed a dog. Noem deeming the 14-month-old pup named Cricket as, quote, untrainable, dangerous, and less than worthless as a hunting dog, eventually taking the pooch to a gravel pit where she shot and killed it.
She said this puppy ruined the hunt by chasing pheasants and having the time of her life.
Do you think that sharing that anecdote, whether fairly or unfairly, cost you a shot at being his vice president?
You know, I would say that that was a story from 20 years ago about me protecting my children from a vicious animal. So
still, it's a story that Noem chose to put in her book a year ago. Noem also wrote about trying to train Cricket the dog with an electric shock collar. Vance was asked about someone else who allegedly did that.
Kaya, please just go, just stop.
Like Hassan Piker, no electrocution of dogs here.
How disgusting is that? What does that tell you about a person?
Well, I think it tells you that they're not that they're bad people.
Yes.
If you can actually cause suffering to an innocent animal, you're probably the kind of person who doesn't worry about suffering in people as well.
Yeah.
On that point, Vance is correct. Noem has overseen the deportation of migrant workers and the oftentimes unlawful and violent warrant-free arrests. But back to Noem and her doomed puppy, Cricket.
And in the way that it's written in the book, it does sound like she basically hated the dog, and so it caused her more problems.
Tell me you shot a pup because it wasn't used to hunting. You know, maybe you're not a good teacher.
Never mind Kristi Noem being a bad teacher, as the Gang on the Five allege, J.D. Vance went even further about people who are cruel to dogs.
You can tell if somebody's really mean to animals. You know, it's like the Jeffrey Dahmer thing.
Yeah.
Like every serial killer ever has actually been really bad to animals. That's sort of how they started. I remember like the Freddy Krueger movies were really big when I was a kid. Well, how did Freddy Krueger got to start? Like one of the things they show is young Freddy Krueger torturing animals.
Yeah.
I feel like we just sort of instinctively understand.
And dogs know.
Yeah, absolutely they do. If you're not taking care of God's creatures, then you're certainly going to be, I think, a pretty bad person otherwise too.
And you might turn out to be a serial killer, Vance says. Did J.D. Vance really forget about Kristi Noem while he was lecturing the masses about the moral rot of people who mistreat dogs? Was Vance really unaware that Kristi Noem, a grand dame of the Trump cabinet, proudly printed her sociopathy between hardcovers last year? If Vance truly didn't know or didn't remember, then Vance's ignorance is matched only by his vanity. If Vance did know about Kristi Noem's past, then Vance's performance is pure cynicism, a pious sneer for the cameras while pretending the gun smoke wafting off of Noem's conscience is only fog from the heartland. Either way, Kristi Noem is reportedly infuriated. According to Trump administration officials, Vance's interview has enraged Noem because it reminds the nation about her controversial past. But even if Kristi Noem and J.D. Vance don't like each other, and Vance humiliated Kristi Noem, one thing is certain. J.D. Vance and Kristi Noem deserve each other. Noem is the pistol-packing paragon of cruelty. Vance is the sanctimonious moralist too stupid or too slippery to notice. Both Trump officials are prime specimens of what you might call the boob bourgeois, or boobs, morons, who also have power. Noem bragged about killing dogs. Vance keeps proudly killing irony. However, I suppose we should be grateful that J.D. Vance for once uttered the truth. People who are cruel to animals are oftentimes people who are cruel to human beings. And in case anybody has forgotten, Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents continue terrorizing human beings. Every day we see video examples of the cruelty that ICE inflicts on migrant workers, defiant American citizens, and anybody else the Trump administration doesn't like. In Virginia recently, ICE agents stopped a woman driving her 16-year-old daughter to school. They asked the mom, Jackie Andrade, for her social security number. Andrade became flustered, and the agents did this.
Mama! Ma! 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 No! No! Ma! Ma!
Those were the cries of Andrade's 16-year-old daughter. Andrade and her family members reportedly have no record of violent crimes or charges. But this is America under Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Kristi Noem. Sadly, the reporter for the New York Post did not follow up on Vance's moralizing about dog cruelty and remind Vance about Noem. But that's okay. deliberately or inadvertently, Vance has reminded all of us about Noem's character. And whether it's shooting dogs or using violence to arrest peaceful human beings, Noem is the symbol of so much that is wrong with America these days. And for a moment, in an interview, even J.D. Vance acknowledged that we're being led by psychopaths.